Okay, let's get started with episode 6 today. I am actually in New Zealand. If all goes well, I am in New Zealand by the time this is getting published, and I am recording this in advance. I think I mentioned that in the last episode. I am on I'm going on a 1 month sabbatical. So I'm not working any of September. So excited and decided I'm going to try to get out at least 2 episodes while I'm gone. But I am on the final stretch where we're literally getting on a train in 4 hours and I need to record 2 episodes. So yes, let's see. Actually, I am going this weekend to one of our really good friends, their wedding in northern Finland. So going there first for the weekend, then coming back and then have one night here. But I know that night I am terrible when it comes to packing. I am so panicked when it comes to packing, which is really weird considering I'm traveling quite a lot. But I just know on that last day when it's we're leaving in 10 hours, there's no way I'm going to have time. All that being said, recording this a bit in advance, life is pretty darn busy right now, but it's been really nice. And it's so nice that it's coming up to this time that I get my sabbatical. I'll be talking about that a little bit on my Instagram, hopefully, when I have a chance. But yeah, super cool that with my company, I have that opportunity. But let's dive in, because today we are talking about building a life while still figuring out your own. This topic can cover a lot of different areas, but where I want to start off is just at me getting married. So I did get married in May of last year, so May of 2024. And at the time that we got married, we had been dating since 2020, so we'd been dating a while. At least by Texas standards, that's a long time. But when we got married, we did not know where we would live. We didn't know, long term, I guess. We were living in Finland at that time, but we didn't know where we'd live. We didn't know when we'd have kids. We didn't know how my career would unfold, or let alone his career. But we did know, obviously, that we wanted to build a life together. So that's kind of the truth that we moved forward with, but we did not have everything figured out in any way. So today I just want to explore that idea of building a life with someone while still figuring out your own life. And as I mentioned, this can kind of cover a couple of different areas. Building your life with someone, and then just in general, moving forward and growing up while you're still figuring things out. So some questions that I've had: do you need to have yourself figured out before committing to someone else? And what does it mean to build a life together when you're still becoming who you are? Today, I want to switch up the episode format just a little bit. And how I'm going to do this is just go through 2 questions. So it might be a bit shorter of an episode today, but let's try it. So, question number 1. Do you have to fully find yourself before you commit to someone else? Now, I am going to be expressing my opinion and my experience with these questions, and I might not always even have an answer, more of just thinking out loud of, these questions. So I have just mentioned my main story of marriage and not having some pretty big things figured out while still committing to something. But there's also some other things that I've committed to without having fully figured out things. For example, starting this podcast, I don't have a long-term vision of where this is going to go or even how long I am committing. But starting before I've had full clarity, I'm doing that. And then another example would be when I moved to Prague for the very first time. I did have what I tried to do was give myself those clarity in terms of the timelines and that cap on 1 year in Prague. But I moved without having ever been to that city. I moved without a job, and I moved with quite a lot of unknowns, I'd say. I think starting something before it's fully figured out can be really nerve-wracking because, there's just a lot that you can think. You can think of all of the things that might go wrong headed into a scenario when you don't know what the outcome is going to be. and I guess that's everything in life, right? Like before you go into anything, you don't know how it's going to end. But I guess in certain situations, you might have more concrete ideas or more concrete plans when you go into something, which can bring a little bit of peace. But at the end of the day, everyone, no matter what you're doing, like you start stuff and then you just kind of see what happens and how it unfolds as you live it. And I think that comes back pretty easily to the idea of getting married before you've fully found yourself. So committing to someone when you still feel like you're figuring out who you are, who you want to be, and what you want your life to look like. I've heard the idea thrown around that like you need to know who you are before you commit to someone else, or like even before you start dating. Like you should be really confident in yourself, who you are, and like where you want to go and what your future is going to look like. Like basically have yourself figured out before you add someone else to the picture. And I think there is one part of that I think I agree with. Like I don't think that meeting someone should complete who you are, but at the same time, to put so much pressure on like, you need to figure out everything before you add another person to the picture, like who's ever going to feel like they figured everything out? So I don't think that would have been possible for me. I feel like I'm always going to feel like I'm learning and figuring out who I am as I age. But one thing that I've thought about is that maybe, especially coming from Texas, where it's a lot more common to get married young, that maybe I'm more open to the idea of figuring it out as I go in terms of growing with someone, because I have had the examples of a lot of people I know getting married young before they really feel like they know who they are, and somehow being able to figure that out even within a committed relationship. My parents, I mean, this is a while ago, but still in Texas, people still do get married quite young. But they actually dated for 9 months before they got engaged. And then, oh wait, no. I think they dated for They dated for 3 months and then were married 9 months later. So I think it was like 1 year after they met, they were married. I think that's the right order because yes, 3 months, that's what it was. So yeah, very extreme example in terms of like when you know, but for my parents, and they were young at this time. So I'm sure like neither of them felt like they had everything figured out in the world. I'm sure that they hadn't felt like they both were like fully grown and like an adult and like ready for the world fully. And yet they still committed, and now it's been, I guess, 35 years that they've been married. So my background and exposure to saying yes to things as you're still figuring out yourself, I'm sure has prompted me to feel more comfortable with that. But in general, so going back to the question, do you have to find yourself before you commit to someone else? I want to maybe even take out the to someone else. I think to anything. Like, do you need to figure stuff out before you start? And my opinion is that it's okay to start without full clarity. I think the figuring out comes with the doing. So get married, grow into who you are, figure like it will, you're going to be married. Like life is going to happen anyways. You're going to figure it out. I think waiting to feel a certain way, to do a certain thing is maybe a myth. I'm sure as I'm saying this, there's already something in your mind of like, oh yeah, like I've kind of thought I should wait to start XYZ thing until I get to whatever point. So just like my examples at the beginning of, silly small ones, like starting the podcast. Okay, it's not that big of a deal. No one cares except for me. But I don't feel ready. I don't know what my plan is or what any of this equipment is or like what my plan is going to be in 6 months. But the idea that we need to have stuff figured out. We need to start stuff with full clarity. I'm just not sure that I agree with that. And actually, one of my favorite influencers, her name is, I think, Jade Beeson. She lives in the UK. And her big thing that actually, I think, really pushed me to start the podcast was you can't have good content until you have bad content. And maybe that's just more of like a life saying. You can't have good plans. I don't know. You can't have good fun until you've had bad fun or until you've had bad plans. Okay, that was kind of silly, but you know what I mean. But let's go back to the question again. Do you have to fully find yourself before you commit to someone else or something else? My opinion pretty clearly is that no, I don't think you need to wait till you're ready. I think sometimes just moving forward and choosing that thing is just the part of the process of becoming who you want to become or figuring out whatever it is you want to figure out. So if there's something you've been holding back on, maybe we should all take Jade's advice. And yeah, you can't have the good things till you've practiced and you've had the bad things. All right, let's go to our second question, or actually our last question. How do you hold on to your individuality while building us? I think there might be a fear that committing to something might freeze who you are and you need to be that forever. So, for my like marriage example, who I was when we got married or even engaged or even started dating, I feel like it could be easy to look back and be like, "Oh, back then I felt like this and this is who I was and this is who Marcus committed to. Therefore, that's who I need to continue to be moving forward." Probably a silly question in terms of like, well, of course not. I don't know. When I put it like that, duh. We all know we're going to evolve and grow. But for me, I did find myself like after we got married, feeling like, okay, I'm an adult now. Not that marriage brought on the adultness, but yeah, maybe this like kind of thought starts creeping in of I'm an adult now. I should know who I am. And the truth is, like, I'm still figuring out my career. I'm still figuring out my creativity. I'm still figuring out how I want to live. And just because I got married, it's not like I'm locked into the identity of like who I was when we got married. I am going to evolve. I'm going to grow. Same as Marcus. I don't think that this is one of those things that like people are specifically asking and thinking and getting this fear of like, oh, but when I get married, I'm going to have like, that's going to be who I am. But I think it might be one of those things that happens in the background. It's one of those thoughts that kind of creeps up without you even realizing it. Bringing that back to the question of how you hold on to your individuality while still building a life with someone else is understanding that, just because you've committed and you're with that person does not mean that the evolution of who you are is stopping. And that leads to the individuality. That leads to me trying my own thing outside of our marriage, and the things that we're trying together in our life. It's understanding that I'm still like my own complete person. I still have my own desires that I'm going to go out. I'm going to go try to be creative now. I'm going to go try to do my own thing for a bit. But balancing that with then like the goals of us as a couple. But I think one of the best parts of it is that marriage doesn't end your individuality. It instead encourages it. And I think in a way that you feel so safe. So there are very few things in life that are like absolute truths. I have a few. First of all, being my faith. Secondly, being that Marcus is my husband. He is loving, he is caring, he is kind. He is like my person. We're committed to each other for life now. And there is such a like foundational relief, I guess, in living based off from that. So I feel like from that place where I feel stable, I feel safe, I feel secure, I feel loved, I can then be who I want to be, knowing that I have someone who loves me so much and who's committed to me and that like we're going to build a life together. But that commitment to each other actually gives us more room to explore who we are without the fear of what's going to happen tomorrow being maybe as big. Because what's going to happen tomorrow? I don't know, but I do know at least that Marcus will be here. And I do know at least that I have committed to him and that I love him and I want him here in 60 years. There's this saying out there, or this, I don't know, feeling sometimes that getting married, or in general, committing to building a life with someone means you're sacrificing something. Like you're sacrificing the chance to become who you really are. But I think I'm feeling the opposite. I feel like that strong relationship actually makes space for both of us to keep growing and be who we are as individuals, maybe even more than if we were separate, because we feel safe and like loved and fully known in who we are and what our desires are. And yeah, there's just more space to like grow and try that out with more freedom in some way. Let me go back to the question then, which was, how do you hold on to your individuality while building us? Well, as I think I have just at least tried to describe, is that I don't think that being in a relationship stops self-discovery and figuring it out. In fact, I think it actually makes that space bigger and better. I think that's a really cool example then of then trying to apply that to more things in my life. Like, yeah, starting the podcast or doing things that you don't have full clarity on and just starting them. Because maybe in whatever that is, like that is going to give you the space and the time and the energy to figure it out. Like you just got to start. I don't want to get too much into that because that will open up like a whole other topic. Let's stick with building a life while still figuring out your own. But I think it's a nice idea. I think it's a nice idea and something for me specifically to keep in mind of like, I don't always have to know how things are going to go and have full clarity before I move forward on trying stuff. But let's just close this out because I do feel like, I covered my 2 questions. It was a pretty short episode compared to the last ones. So let's see how it all sounds once it's all edited and like done and everything. If y'all have any feedback on the question format, always open and happy to hear because as I said, I am just trying stuff even though I don't have full clarity, and you can't have good content till you have bad content, and feedback helps with that. So always happy for any comments or anything from y'all. And thank you so much for listening once again. Like I'm like 6 episodes in, actually have a good amount of listeners, and some people are messaging me and giving me opinions, and I love it all. Maybe one more thing I could ask actually is that if you would leave a review, I think that pushes my podcast out even more. So that would be really helpful and awesome. Thank you all so much and talk soon.